Hi, this is Mona with JoyConnectionNowLive.com. Thank you very much for joining me for Filigree and Jewelry Part 2. I've got my workstation set up with my charcoal brick. I've set up my design as compared to the sketch I've created for it. I've cut my parts and bent them and curled them into the shapes that I want to use for my design. I'm applying a little flux. I'm spreading out my little pieces of solder here. Then I'm going to heat up my torch and I'm going to warm those little bits of solder and pick them up with my pick and place them at every single joint in the design. The check mark that we created with the curls on the tips in the first tutorial is now on the flat surface of the charcoal, and small pieces of filigree are being attached to create my design. So I warm up the pieces of small bits of solder and pick them up with a pick, and then I heat up the check mark design with the pieces of filigree exactly next to it with no space in between, and then I place that piece of solder very carefully onto the warmed metal, and I allow that solder to flow into and join the two pieces. The filigree will be joining the main frame check that we created in tutorial number 1. So everywhere that filigree wire is touching the main frame of 16 gauge wire, I'm applying a small piece of solder. Now when my piece gets dry or the flux looks like it's been depleted, I reapply flux, warm it again, and the solder will not flow without flux, and the metal pieces will not stick together without flux and solder. So if you applied nothing to these pieces but torch work, eventually you could melt them down, but they would never join. So you have to flux, then you have to apply a bit of solder, and you can either do it this way with a pick like you see me doing it here, or you can simply place those little flat snips of solder on top of the joints and heat them with flux in a torch, and they will go into flow there, but they won't go into flow as fast as if I heat them up on the end of my solder pick. This work gets much faster this way. And while you're torching your sterling silver wire, and all of this wire is sterling silver, something called fire scale will build up on the surface of your metal. And fire scale is where the copper is burning out of the alloy of the sterling silver and depositing pardon me, on the surface. So the silver prep that I have warming in the Pyrex beaker or measuring cup in the background where you can't see it, I'll adjust my camera in a minute, you'll be able to see it, but silver prep is a non-toxic and very, very safe product. In fact, the safest product I've been able to find to use in the home, where it's safe to pour down your drain of your sink. It won't do any damage to your sink or your drain. It doesn't put off any toxic fumes when you use it, and it does very effectively remove the fire scale from your silver work. So there, I've moved it off the charcoal into the pickle cup, and I'm about to adjust my camera so that you can see all the way back there to where I have the work resting in the pickle cup. And that pickle cup is staying warm on a little coffee mug warmer, and silver prep comes dry in that little white screw top container, and it's diluted in water, and you put 1 tablespoon of silver prep per cup of water, and I'm using 2 cups in case I'm using a long piece of design work. I make sure that I get it fully submerged. And once I'm satisfied that the fire scale has been removed, I'll return the piece to the charcoal brick, and I'll continue working on my solder joints. Occasionally you do need to stop and remove the fire scale from your work, because if the fire scale builds up on your work in between solder joints, the solder won't flow and you won't be able to finish your piece. So it's important to work on really clean metal, and that's why pickling is important. Once I'm satisfied the fire scale has been removed effectively or sufficiently, then I'll put it in that little bowl in front. There we go. That is just plain cool water to rinse off the pickle. Then I'll blot the piece dry, and I'll put it back on my charcoal brick, and I'll be ready to add more components. Now with the 2 check marks, I'm creating a pair of earrings. So I want mirror images. So I let 1 check mark remain in position one way, and then on the second piece I have reversed it. So here you see me comparing the first piece that I've completed with the second piece to make sure that I have some symmetry and that I still have mirrored images in my reversed piece that match the first piece I finished. Here again, I'm spreading out my solder, heating a little piece up, and these are very tiny little chips, and they create just a tiny ball of solder on the tip of the pick. Then I apply it to more of the joints, and I'm just about done soldering all the joints for this piece. Now you're about to see a real faux pas. I've just dropped a really super hot piece of metal onto my carpeted floor where it's in the process of branding my floor with this design. So now I'm going to have to pickle it, clean it, make sure I've burnt off all the carpet fibers to make sure that first of all I don't end up with a bunch of carpet fibers in my burnishing tumbler when I get to that stage. So I'm removing the fire scale. And be patient with removing fire scale. It's really important to get it all off. And once it's off, the metal will take on a dull white finish. It won't look shiny like silver, but the darkness will be gone and it will look more white than anything else. Once you have finished removing all the fire scale and rinsing the piece off, the next stage is to place your completed project into a tumbler with steel shot, and the steel shot in the tumbler will burnish your metal into a beautiful glossy silver finish that looks just like something out of a jewelry store. It really is very encouraging once you see that beautiful shine develop. So those pieces have gone into the tumbler, and they're going to burnish for a while. Go over to cooltools.us and check out the instructions on using the lower tone tumbler there. It's a very, very good instructional video on how to use a tumbler correctly. Now I'm checking my joints, giving it a final rinse, and getting ready to go into the tumbler. Thanks for joining my tutorial.